So you know when you've had your car for a little bit and it starts developing that creaking and squeaking noise that you can hear in the interior while you're driving and it just drives you insane? Well, the C8 is no different. So today we're gonna try to fix some of those common areas where it's coming from for less than $10 and using this. So let's get started. So thanks for tuning in, guys. So I've had this C8 Corvette for about 2.5 years and it's got about 40,000 miles on it. And it's starting to show its age a little bit, and you can definitely hear it in the interior and even doing things like opening up the rear trunk. So check this out. So if I were to open the rear trunk, hopefully that's getting caught on the camera. You hear that creak? Yeah, it's not exactly the nicest sound, especially when you're showing up to a car show with all your buddies and you're trying to show off, and then you open up and it sounds like it's like the hatch is about to fall off. So that's not fun. So today we're gonna be looking at fixing some of those common areas that are happening. And it's not just on the rear hatch, it's also on certain areas on the roof here as well, that as the car is flexing and such, because it naturally flexes as you're going through, as you're going through corners and all that kind of stuff, or bumps especially, that's when you start hearing that creaking sound. When everything is brand new, all the parts are like new, you don't really hear that as much. But as things start wearing, especially where you have the weather seals, like on here in regards to this roof, that stuff actually needs maintenance to keep it looking fresh and new, or it needs to be replaced. Now, generally 40,000 miles in 2 years, you shouldn't have to replace any of the lining for any of these pieces on the car. But what you do need to try to do is use some silicone grease to actually, for lack of a better term, lube it up so that it's not making those squeaking noises. Because that's what it is basically the silicone rubber rubbing against either the paint or whatever piece and causing that creaking noise that you can hear in the bass. So I'm going to show you where exactly you need to use this so that your car is not going to make that kind of noise. And if you do this on a regular basis, like once a season or whatnot, that's going to drastically reduce how often you're hearing any kind of creaking noise, especially if you've had your C8 for a little bit of time. So we're going to start with the roof first and then work our way backwards to do all the other sections. So alrighty guys, so the first place we're going to check out is the roof section. So we already have everything prepped up. I have the roof section off the car already. So we're going to be looking at using the silicone grease on these sections right here, along with these sections right here on the car. Now, before we actually put the actual silicone grease, we do need to clean the area. And for that, I'm going to be using just some simple soap and water to do that. You don't want to use anything that's alcohol based on these weather linings. It's just some water and soap that's just mixed together in here. So very, very easy. So we're going to start with that and clean the areas here first before we add the silicone grease to it. Alright guys, so we have cleaned all the different sections here that we're going to be greasing up first. And we're going to be using, again, this silicone grease. And I'll have a link in the description below so you can find where you can get this from. I got this from Amazon. It's super easy to find. I think it costs like about $7 to $8. It's very cheap. And all we're going to be doing is just putting a little bit on our fingertips, and we're going to put it on these linings. Now you don't need a lot. You need very, very little. All you're doing is just putting a very, very thin layer around all of these different parts. Now, the big thing that you want to make sure you're doing though is that you're only putting it on the outer surfaces. You're not putting it in the grooves of these linings, because that's where all the water is going. So when I talk about that, what I mean is you're going to be putting it on this side and this side, along with this side, and you're putting a very, very thin amount. And you don't want to have any that actually goes into the actual area where all the water is supposed to go through. you need to have that area clear so that the water is able to run off the car. If you're not, you have it puddling in areas and you could potentially have leaks and all that kind of stuff. So you're gonna do that for the car, and then you're gonna do that for the roof itself, and you're gonna do the same thing where you're gonna put it around here and just make sure that you're not covering into the actual groove itself. Like I said, you're just trying to get a very nice thin layer of the silicone on there to kind of coat it. You're not trying to drench this at all when you're doing this. So you should try to just leave that. So by the time you're done with this, you should have a nice kind of semi sheen, like a satin sheen on there. And that's all you really need. You don't need a lot to do this. Again, being very careful you don't put any actually in the grooves, you're just putting it on the outside. And let's do this other side. It needs like a little bit more. And then coming back to the car, we are going to be doing the exact same thing. So again, just taking a little bit of grease, probably a little bit too much actually in this case. Just really spread it on my fingers real quick. And just apply it on there. You don't want it having any kind of goop, you just want a nice sheen that's on these that you have on these linings. So because that's all you really need. You don't really need anything crazy with this. I know it's not the most glamorous type of mod or how-to, but honestly, when you've been dealing with creaking noises coming out of your car for the last like month and a half, because that's usually how long it takes for my patients to kind of go, then this is probably going to be one of the best little bits of time that I invested in myself to try to fix the issue. So, because it's one of those, it doesn't bother me initially, but it's one of those, after a little bit of time, if I haven't canceled it out in my head that the car is making that noise, I'm going to eventually try to do something. I'm actually surprised it took this long to actually get to this point. By the way, if you find this information useful so far and you like what you're seeing, I definitely invite you to like this video as well as subscribe to the channel if you haven't. It really does help me and help the channel grow, kind of deal, and definitely helps just support this kind of effort in making all these different how-to videos and the product review videos as well. So I do really appreciate the support on all that. Another spot to definitely keep in mind to try to do is also these circular spots here. And in these areas, I know I didn't really clean them exactly, but you can put the silicone grease here to also help mitigate the amount of noise that's coming in from this section also. So you want to also do it for the side. Just make sure you don't put too much, like I kind of almost did. Let me see if I can spread that out a little bit. Just spread that out over here, and that'll be fine. So. All right, and do this side real quick. Let's spread this around. And there we go. All Alrighty, so we've done the cabin section, so now we're going to be looking at doing the trunk section. And there's a few spots that we're going to be doing, but also one or two spots that I honestly have to kind of troubleshoot myself, because I know exactly what the sound from my creaking on my C8 is done, but I don't think it's one of the traditional places that you would have to do some silicone. So we're going to investigate a little bit to see kind of where it's coming from exactly. Open up the trunk. Still hear the creaking. So let's show you the typical spots that you need to do first. Alrighty, so looking at the garage, so the places that we need to look at are these here. These are your bumpers that you have for your rear hatch. And so these tend to be, when you put the trunk down, it starts rubbing on these sections here. And you can kind of see them right here. They're a little bit, there's some markings, probably not kicking it up that well. That's where the markings are on where these are. So you have all these different bumpers that we can apply silicone grease to fix it. So I think that's gonna fix a good majority of any kind of sound coming from in here, but at least when it comes to my specific C8 and where the noise is coming from, I think it's coming from the lining in the front. So what we're gonna do real quick is we're gonna clean all these different bumpers first, see how it sounds. If it fixes the problem, then that's the issue. If not, then we're gonna investigate trying to figure out where that other sound is coming from. But I know it has to do something with these kind of linings and also these bumpers here. So let's go and do that real quick. Alrighty guys, so we put the silicone grease in the usual spots on the rear hatch. So let's see if that fixed my creaking issue or not, and see if we need to do a little bit more investigating. So closing the trunk, and then let's see. Nope, that didn't fix it. So, okay, so we got to do a little bit more digging to figure out where the spots are. And I'm pretty sure, like I said before, it is that front part there. I think the lining there is kind of rubbing and causing that sound when you open up the rear hatch. So let's go check that out and see what the issue is. So yeah, probably kind of a little hard to show, but there's the lining that you see on the rear part of the side window here, and it extends all the way across. Now with the hatch open, it is kind of hard to see, and actually it's gonna be a little bit hard to even get to. So I'm gonna have to come from the side here in order to actually do that, and I'm gonna have to probably do it in sections here, which is probably gonna be a little challenging to show while I'm doing it. I'm probably gonna have to bust out the helmet camera to be able to do that. So alrighty, so I'm gonna switch cameras real quick and then let's get to it. So alrighty guys, so I put the grease on the front lining on the rear hatch. So let's see if that fixed the issue. Close it all the way. And I think we fixed it. So that's where the issue was, at least for my C8. So that might be a common issue as C8s get older and you start having, and you just need to essentially put silicone grease on some of those areas. Now that front area was a little bit challenging to actually put on. I couldn't really fit my fingers in through here to be able to do that. You could if you had maybe smaller fingers and not meaty fingers like I do, but you can come from the sides and just do like the linings on the side here and then come in from the side and just do it by sections. It's a little hard to get to, but it is doable. So, but with that, you should have dramatically reduced the amount of creaking and squeaking that you hear from your C8 as it starts to show its age a little bit. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like this video, please check out any of my other videos and we'll see you next time.